The deep connection between the pathological characteristics of paranoid personality disorder, or PPD, and Trump's decision-making. Paranoid personality disorder is a psychological disorder characterized by general distrust, oversensitivity, and hostile interpretation of other people's motives. This article will analyze Trump's crazy behavior after his second inauguration from a new pathological perspective. His decision not only made the United States permanently lose its international honor and reputation, but also provoked unprecedented internal divisions. These behaviors may incite the emotional carnival of supporters in the short term, but they are of no benefit to the country's strategic interests and may even destroy the social foundation of the United States. Through observation of his behavior, this article finds that Trump highly meets the pathological characteristics of paranoid personality disorder and attempts to systematically analyze it from this perspective. I believe you can get key clues to understand the current crisis from it. Its typical manifestations include oversensitivity, extreme reaction to criticism or threats, often misinterpreting neutral behavior as hostility, distrust and suspicion, generally doubting the loyalty and motives of others, believing that others are trying to exploit or harm themselves, confidentiality, overprotecting personal information to avoid exposing weaknesses, interpreting as betrayal, viewing differences or contradictions as personal betrayal, difficult to cooperate, refusing to establish a cooperative relationship with others, often taking a confrontational attitude, long-term resentment, holding on to past offenses and being unable to let go, strong jealousy, feeling threatened by the success or status of others and taking aggressive actions. These characteristics not only distort individual social interactions, but are also likely to cause disastrous consequences in high-level power. When decision-makers are dominated by PPD characteristics, their policies may evolve into paranoid counterattacks against imaginary enemies rather than rational judgments based on facts. Donald Trump's second term in 2025 is a realistic reflection of this pathological characteristic. The close relationship between paranoid personality disorder characteristics and Trump's decision-making is quite evident. Distrust and suspicion often lead to threatening allies and interfering with their sovereignty. For example, Trump has repeatedly threatened Denmark to sell Greenland, ridiculed Canada's sovereignty by claiming that Canada should become the 51st state of the United States, and even used tariffs as a tool to put pressure on allies. This public humiliation of allies far exceeds conventional diplomatic friction. The logic behind PPD is that his behavior stems from a deep suspicion of the motives of allies. He believes that these countries take advantage of the United States and must correct the injustice through extreme means. This suspicion is not based on facts such as Canada being the closest ally of the United States for a long time, but is a typical persecution delusion of PPD patients. The consequences of this are severe. Trust in NATO and the North American free trade system collapsed, and the United States' international reputation fell to the freezing point. Interpretation as betrayal is another characteristic, demonstrated by Trump's hegemonic threat to Panama. He threatened Panama with military occupation and demanded that it abolish the canal contract with China, completely ignoring international law and sovereignty principles. PPD logic. He regarded Panama's cooperation with China as a betrayal of American interests and took extreme revenge. This black-and-white betrayal narrative is the core cognitive model of PPD patients. Consequences. Latin American countries are accelerating their alienation from the United States, and China's influence in the region is increasing instead of decreasing. Oversensitivity and Lies, Paranoid Construction of Trade Deficit, Realistic Manifestation. Trump blatantly falsified the trade deficit data of trading partners such as the European Union, claiming that the European Union plunders the United States by $500 billion a year, and the trade surplus between the United States and Canada is $200 billion a year, and the United States is subsidizing the Canadian economy. In fact, the United States and Canada are the countries with the most balanced trade relations in the world. The actual U.S. trade deficit is only about $65 billion a year, which is less than the $200 billion it claims. Moreover, this trade deficit is not a subsidy, but a result of supply and demand. Trump deliberately exaggerated the numbers, forced his supporters to brainwash, and incited provocations to Canada's sovereignty, which is a manifestation of Trump's lies and highlights that Trump's condition is very serious. PPD logic. The falsification of numbers is not an accidental mistake but a psychological defense mechanism. By exaggerating the threat, rationalizing the extreme attack on the enemy, such as the comprehensive tariff increase on the European Union. Consequences. Global supply chain chaos, U.S. inflation rates soared to 9%, and the cost of living for the lower class increased dramatically. Strong jealousy and confrontation, interfering in EU internal affairs. Trump openly supported the German far-right alternative for Germany, called Merkel stupid, and rudely accused EU leaders of betraying Western values. His hostility to the mainstream political forces in the EU stems from his jealousy of its independence. A united Europe is seen as a challenge to U.S. hegemony. Consequences. European and American relations have fallen to the lowest point since World War II, and the EU has accelerated its strategic autonomy process. Long-term resentment and purge domestic political persecution. Trump launched the Purge movement in the federal government and the military, systematically clearing out diverse gender people in the name of anti-wokeness. He regards social diversity as a betrayal of American traditions, and the purge is a retaliatory catharsis against the imaginary enemy rather than a policy need. Consequences. The government and the military have suffered serious talent loss, and gay and transgender groups have erupted in nationwide protests. This further proves that Trump's PDD condition is very serious. Inhumane policies, paranoid enforcement of immigration issues, realistic manifestations. Trump expelled illegal immigrants on a large scale on the pretext of fulfilling his promises, ignoring the wailing of labor shortages in agricultural states. For instance, California farms lost more than $12 billion due to no harvesters. The recent surge in egg prices in the United States was originally due to chicken plague, but farms need people to raise chickens, and some farms report serious labor shortages. This is related to Trump's insistence on forcibly expelling foreign labor without considering economic balance factors. It is expected that this price increase will continue for at least half a year, which is also one of the symptoms of Trump's partial personality deficiency. Trump has demonstrated his PDD condition through his actual performance. We recommend that Congress immediately suspend his power and cooperate with the diagnosis of his condition. PPD logic. His policies no longer serve realistic goals but are to prove his obsession of never compromising, a typical egocentric thinking of PPD patients. Consequences. Trump's personality disorder mental illness has caused a severe blow to the agricultural economy, a surge in food prices, and a spread of humanitarian crises. Conclusion. Pathological power and global crisis. Trump's second term reveals a cruel reality. When the paranoia of PPD patients is combined with the highest power, Their pathological characteristics will be infinitely magnified through the state machinery, from fabricating trade data to purging minority groups, from threatening to occupy other countries, to destroying the alliance system. These decisions have deviated from the logic of real politics and have become a self-fulfilling war against an imaginary enemy. The United States is transforming from a defender of the global order to a paranoid destroyer. This is not only a tragedy for the United States, but also a severe threat to the rational governance of mankind. Imagine that the alarm clock of the top leader of the United States is filled with all kinds of fantasies of a mentally ill patient. The possibility of him doing actual harm will increase. A president who has been in office for less than a month has brought devastating disasters to the United States in such a short period of time. Prices are rising, allies are alienated, internal conflicts are intensified, and specific groups are persecuted. Friends, what do you think will happen in another 4 years?